A parent's love for their child, it can't be measured. It's the sleepless nights, the meals they gave up, the years spent quietly stepping back, just so their child could move forward. There's no contract, no expectations, just unconditional love, but sometimes, that love isn't met with gratitude. Today, I want to tell you about a woman named Lena. A mother who gave everything for her son, only to be called a burden. But what stays with me isn't the pain she felt. It's how she rose again, quietly, bravely, like someone piecing her heart back together, one shard at a time. It was nearly dusk when the phone rang. Lena was folding towels in her laundry room, just trying to finish the day like any other. The hum of the dryer filled the space, soft and comforting. She saw her son's name, Caleb, light up on the screen. And despite everything, she smiled. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, tucking the phone between her shoulder and ear. "Hey, Mom," he replied, distracted. "Just checking in. Melina and I are heading out for dinner. Paris is expensive, but she's happy." Lena asked about the weather, the hotel, whether he'd seen the Seine. "You know how moms are." She did the asking. He gave short, polite answers. She didn't mind. She never did then, he said. "Anyway, we'll talk more soon. Love you too," she answered, but the call didn't end. The line stayed open, and what Lena heard next changed everything. Melina's voice, low, casual. "Who was that, Mom?" Caleb replied. "Something about the house again. Probably that leak in the guest bathroom." Then Melina laughed. "Well, it is technically hers. For now." "And Caleb?" he said, sharp as a knife. "She's a burden. We'll talk her into signing the deed eventually. Guilt works every time." Lena stood still. The warmth of the dryer, the scent of clean towels, all of it faded. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her son, her only son, wasn't just taking her for granted. He was plotting, you see. Grief doesn't always come like thunder. Sometimes it moves like water, quiet, invasive, unstoppable. Lena was 42 when grief first knocked the breath out of her lungs. Her husband, Paul, died in an accident no one saw coming. He left behind a tired wife, a teenage son, and just enough insurance to keep them from falling apart completely. She remembered signing the final paperwork. The man across the desk kept calling it a benefit. But no amount of money could replace the way Paul's hands had steadied hers. Or the way he could always make their son laugh on the darkest days. Lena didn't touch a penny for a year. But eventually, she had to rebuild. And so she did. She bought a house. A modest white painted craftsman out near Asheville. It had old bones, and a kind soul. She picked it because Paul would have loved the porch. Because their boy needed roots. Because she needed to believe something could still be hers. She painted those walls with her own hands. Landscaped on the weekends. Furnished it with second-hand pieces. She lovingly restored that house. Wasn't just shelter, it was healing. She didn't date. She worked 2 jobs most years, 3 in the summer. When Caleb needed camp or books or braces, she told herself it was enough. That being a good mother was its own kind of love story. When Caleb got into Columbia, she cried in the parking lot behind the diner where she waitressed. The scholarship wasn't full, but she figured it out. She sold her grandmother's ring, dipped into the insurance, took an overnight shift, told Caleb not to worry, that she had it covered, and he promised he'd never forget what she did for him. But time has a strange way of erasing memory. Or maybe it just reveals people after graduation. Caleb and Melina came back to North Carolina for a while. Said it was temporary. Money was tight. Lena didn't hesitate. She gave them upstairs, repainted the guest room in the color Melina liked. Said nothing when the curtains were replaced. Said less when Caleb rerouted the mail in their names. And said nothing at all when they stopped calling it Mom's house. Just the house. Maybe she wanted to believe they were a family again. Maybe she was tired of eating dinner alone. But what she never saw coming was that the very hands she raised would reach for the thing she bled to keep standing. This is just the beginning of Lena's story. And trust me, she's not done yet, because what will she do next? It's not revenge. It's not rage. It's rebirth, and I'll tell you all about it in the next part. And now, hearing those words, "She's a burden," Lena felt something in her chest fold in on itself. The memories came like a flood. Not just moments, but sacrifices. The mortgage she carried alone while her husband was dying. The holidays she worked through so Caleb could have new shoes. braces, books for school, the chronic back pain she never addressed because rest wasn't an option. All those little joys she shelved, garden shows, travel dreams, a new coat, so someone else could live easier. But what hit her the hardest wasn't the betrayal. It was the bitter familiarity of it all. The way part of her wasn't even surprised. That quiet little voice that had been whispering for years, "You've let them take too much." She folded the last towel in the basket, carefully. Deliberately, smoothed it flat, stacked it on the shelf. Then she walked to her bedroom and knelt down beside the bed. Reached underneath and pulled out the fireproof box. The one with the deed. The proof. The last solid thing with her name on it. See. It doesn't happen all at once. If it did, you'd notice. You'd fight. But erosion, it's slow. It's quiet. It wears you down grain by grain until you look up one day and the shoreline of your life is gone. They started calling it our house about 3 months after moving in. Just little slips. Lena would say, "We should replace that porch step." Or, "We've been thinking of getting a new stove." Then Caleb started managing the bills, offering, kindly, to take care of everything online. Make things easier. It's just more efficient. Mom, she thought it was love. Help. A grown son stepping up. She didn't ask why the electric bill now went to Caleb's email. Or why the gas company started calling her Mrs. Hargrave Jr. instead of Lena. She didn't push back when her voice in the house began to fade. Lena painted the hallway one weekend while Lena was at church. Said the old blue made the space feel small. Replaced it with a lifeless cream that matched their furniture. Lena stood there blinking, pretending not to notice. Lena hugged her from behind and whispered, "We're building something beautiful here." Lena nodded, pretended to agree. Then came the nursery. It was a sunny afternoon when Lena brought it up, one hand on a coffee mug, the other resting on her pregnant belly. "We were thinking, if everything goes well, maybe we could turn your room into the nursery. You could move into the guest room, it's cozy." Caleb didn't even glance up from his phone. As if it had already been decided that night. Lena lay awake in the room they wanted to take from her. The one her late husband Paul had sealed up for winter with his bare hands. She looked at the walls and realized something terrifying. She no longer lived in this house. She simply existed in it. Every wall whispered someone else's name. She turned on the bedside lamp and opened the drawer. Inside was a folded letter. Caleb's handwriting from his freshman year of college. "I'll always take care of you, Mom." She said it beside the deed. Then she did something she had never done before. She listened. The recording was faint at first. Caleb's voice, casual, saying, "She'll give in if we remind her how much she owes us." Lena laughed. Mention the college loans, and the fact that she hasn't paid rent since we moved in. Lena's hand trembled. Rent. In my own house. She pressed play again. She's emotionally dependent. Caleb said, "We don't have to be cruel. Just make her feel like we're her only real family. She's easy to guilt." Lena added. Then came the part that made Lena's breath catch. "Once we're on the deed, we can finally start renovating properly, clinking glass, silverware." Then Lena again, more casual this time, "We'll take the master bedroom when we get back. It makes no sense for her to have the biggest room. She barely does anything anymore. That one, cut the deepest." Lena closed her eyes. The silence of the room swelled around her like a tide. In some Paris cafe, eating dinner she'd paid for, they had been planning her removal. Her erasure. She pressed play again. Caleb's voice, "She doesn't even realize how close we are to just taking over everything. And if she pushes back, well, we'll mention retirement homes, healthcare. The woman's not getting younger." Then Lena, laughing softly, "Possession is 9/10 of the law. We've been living there for years. If we had to fight it, I'm sure some judge would sympathize." And that was it. That's when Lena stopped being surprised and started planning. They laughed. It was a sound Lena once lived for, the music of her son's happiness, echoing from the living room as she cooked. Back when all she wanted was for Caleb to feel safe, loved, full. But now, that laughter turned sour. A knot in her stomach formed the moment she realized it was no longer shared with her, but at her expense. She hit record, quietly, carefully. She saved every word that night. She didn't sleep, just sat alone at the kitchen table, in the dark, palms wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. The house, her house, seemed to hum with memories. Birthday streamers once hung from these beams. Paul's muddy handprints were still pressed into the garden bricks. Laundry, folded by candlelight when the power went out. So Caleb wouldn't miss school. All those years, all that love. And it still wasn't enough to protect her by sunrise. Something inside her had gone still. Not broken, just resolute. Lena wouldn't beg for space in her own home. She wouldn't barter with her self-worth. She pulled out the deed again, her name still crisp in black ink, and made the first call. Joanna didn't flinch when Lena showed up at her office without warning. No judgment, just a quiet, "Come in," and a chipped mug of hot coffee. That's friendship, isn't it? Someone who's seen you through both vows and funerals. Lena slid the paper across the desk. "Can you confirm I still own it outright?" she asked. Joanna glanced down, scanned the page with lawyer's eyes, and gave the smallest nod. "All yours, Lena, every square inch." That was the moment Lena stopped feeling sorry. She started planning. What followed wasn't dramatic, it was deliberate. Legal protections, paperwork, a realtor named Marcus who didn't ask unnecessary questions. Lena moved with a calm efficiency that surprised even her. She packed only what mattered, her books, her linens, Paul's favorite chair. The rest she boxed for Caleb. She even arranged the storage and labeled everything. Like a mother still caring even after being discarded, she didn't announce her departure. No grand goodbyes, just a furnished rental in Charlottesville with pale wood floors and no ghosts. On her last night, Lena left a note on the counter. Surprise. A burden did this. The keys lay beside it. She locked the door from the inside and slipped out through the garage. The same way she used to sneak treats to Caleb when he was grounded, and as she drove down the street. Past the grocery store where she once bribed him with gum. Past the school he rode his bike to. Lena didn't cry. She didn't even glance in the mirror. She just let go. They returned on a Wednesday. The calls began around 2 p.m. First Caleb, then Melina, then Caleb again. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. The keys didn't work. The furniture was gone. His voice cracked with panic. "Did you change the locks? Where are you?" Lena didn't answer. Not because she wanted revenge. No, because she had nothing left to explain. She stirred sugar into her coffee and stared out the window of her quiet rental. Her silence said more than any words ever could. By evening, the tone changed. Melina's voice softened into something sweet, almost maternal. "We're just worried, okay? Please call us. Let us know you're safe." Lena smiled. Safe. That word used to feel distant. Now it felt like sunlight. Later that night came Caleb's last message. His voice cracked under the weight of disbelief. "We found the note. I don't know what you think you heard. But this was a huge mistake. This is our home, too. You had no right, none, to sell it. But here's the thing," she did, and listening to all this, me. Lynn, I couldn't help but feel a chill. Not from fear, but awe. There's a quiet kind of bravery that older women carry, like Lena. The kind that doesn't shout or slam doors. It just walks away. With dignity, with her name still on the deed. And a legacy of love they never deserved. And as I imagine her sipping her coffee in that sunlit rental in Charlottesville, I picture peace. Real, earned peace. And God, didn't she deserve it? They're talking to a lawyer. "You've really done it this time." The message read. Lena saved it, just like the others. But this time, she didn't reply. She didn't explain. Didn't defend. Didn't comfort. She let them scream into the silence they'd created. Let them wonder where exactly the line between love and control had finally snapped, and why they'd never noticed it fraying. She wasn't going to drag them across it. Not anymore. The house was gone. The door, once their guarantee of welcome, was now closed for good. And in the stillness that followed, Lena's silence spoke louder than anything she'd ever said aloud. Then came the ultimatum. Caleb's message was curt, commanding. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. cafe in Maine. If you don't show, we're coming to your office." So she went. She arrived at 10:05, not to be rude, but deliberate. Caleb and Melina were already there, stiff in their seats, arms locked around mugs they hadn't touched, faces rehearsed in righteous fury. Lena didn't greet them. She sat down, placed her phone on the table, screen up, and pressed play. Their own voices came spilling out, cold, casual, cruel. "She's a burden. We'll take the master bedroom. Guilt works every time. She watched their expressions shift as their words came back to haunt them. Melina turned pale. Caleb's jaw twitched, then clenched in a mix of anger and disbelief. You misunderstood. He said flatly, no. Lena replied, I finally understood. Melina leaned in, voice edged with hurt and venom. You blindsided us. You sold our home out from under us. It was never yours. Lena said, calm and clear. It was mine. Paid for. Maintained. Protected. Caleb scoffed. After everything we've done for you. She met his eyes. Unwavering. Yes. And you taught me exactly what not to become. They didn't have a response. And Lena didn't wait for one. There will be no money. She said, no access to my accounts. No forwarding address. No second chances. Melina opened her mouth. Then shut it. Caleb's fists clenched until his knuckles went white. I'm your son. He said, as if the title alone should earn him forgiveness, and I was your mother. Lena replied softly, not your asset. Silence hung between them. The kind of silence people who thrive on noise and need never learn to sit in. Then Lena stood, slid an envelope across the table, storage unit details, and turned to go. No one stopped her. No one called her name back in her new apartment. The quiet wasn't lonely anymore. It wasn't the aching silence she used to fill with other people's wants. It was peaceful, whole. She didn't jump at knocks, or brace for demands masked as affection. She made herself tea in the mornings, real tea. Not the half-cold cups she used to forget on the counter. She sat by the window, watched birds land on the ledge, read entire chapters without interruption some days. She didn't speak to anyone. And she liked it that way, but Lena hadn't vanished. A few weeks in, she discovered a small community center nearby. They held weekly gatherings, grief support, boundary setting, quiet places where voices didn't have to be raised to be heard. At first, it felt strange to sit in a circle and say her name aloud, as if introducing someone new. But maybe she didn't come to talk about Caleb, not directly. She came to explore the quiet ways women disappear into the lives of others, and how they find their way back. She met women who had survived worse, and others just learning to say no for the very first time. They didn't fix one another. They listened. That was enough. One evening, after the session, a woman named Sabria pulled her aside. She ran a shelter for single mothers at the edge of town. We could use someone like you, she said, not to preach, just to sit with them. Tell the truth. So Lena did. Once a week, then twice. She sat on worn couches with exhausted young mothers who had no one left to believe in them. She listened to their stories, shared pieces of her own. Not the bitter ones, just the ones that let them know they weren't alone. She never told them what to do. She let them choose that for themselves. Then, one crisp afternoon in early fall, as she walked home with the wind brushing past her coat, she realized something quietly profound. She hadn't thought about Caleb in days. Not with anger, not with pain, just distance. Not every loss is a wound. Some are simply the first step towards something that finally feels like yours. A year passed without drama or declarations. Just honest days, steady and unspectacular in their peace. Lena didn't even realize the date, until she saw the first yellow leaf drift past her window, and with it came a feeling she hadn't expected. Freedom. The kind you don't announce, the kind you earn. Autumn had always been Paul's favorite season. And once upon a time, it had been Caleb's too, back when he was small enough to believe that jumping into piles of leaves was the pinnacle of joy. Lena used to rake those leaves herself, piling them high just so her little boy could leap in with laughter that filled the yard like music. That morning, she made herself a cup of tea and sat quietly at the kitchen table, journal in front of her. No one needed anything from her that day. No phone calls, no lists, no guilt. She opened to a blank page and began to write, not to Caleb, not to Paul, not to anyone else, just to herself. You were never a burden, she wrote. You were the foundation. You held everything together when it was falling apart. You carried what no one else saw and gave more than anyone ever gave back. And when they tried to reduce you to your usefulness, you chose to walk away. That wasn't cruelty. That was clarity. She signed it simply. No flourish, no apology. Later, Lena went for a walk. She hadn't planned to go near the old neighborhood, but her feet seemed to move with a quiet will of their own. When she reached the familiar street, She slowed, not out of longing. Not to look back, but simply to pass through. The house was still there. It looked the same, yet distant. Someone had painted the door. The porch looked clean, cared for, and to her surprise, it didn't hurt the way she'd imagined. She didn't stop. She didn't wait for a face to appear in the window. She didn't even hope. She just kept walking because what Lena had lost wasn't her son. That truth had settled in over time. Not with anger, but with a quiet acceptance. What she had lost was the version of him she'd held onto for so long. The version that would never turn away. The man who would remember the hands that built his world. What she let go of wasn't a child, it was the illusion that he had ever truly seen her, and in the space that truth left behind, she found peace, soft, uncomplicated, honest, and for the first time in what felt like years it was enough. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is to let go. Lena's story isn't just about a mother and her son. It's about the quiet, unseen strength it takes to walk away, not in anger, but in dignity. It's about reclaiming your worth when the world, or the people you love most, try to make you feel small or expendable. She didn't fight. She didn't shout. She didn't try to prove her value. Instead, she remembered it. That final walk past her old home, it wasn't a goodbye. It was a quiet affirmation. I still exist. I still matter. Even without the title of mother. Even without being needed. I am whole. Too often, we measure love by how much we give away, our time, our patience, our silence. But Lena reminds us that real love, even the unconditional kind, should never mean erasing ourselves, and maybe that's the heart of her story. Not just the pain of being called a burden, but the healing that comes from realizing you never were. So now I want to ask you, if you were in Lena's shoes, what would you have done? Would you have stayed, hoping for change? Would you have sacrificed more of yourself, just to be needed again? Or would you, like Lena, choose to walk, gracefully and quietly, into a life where your value doesn't need to be proven? Because here's the truth, you deserve to be seen. Not just for what you do, but for who you are. If someone in your life has ever made you feel invisible, I hope Lena's story gives you strength. And if you've ever taken someone for granted, maybe it's time to reach out. Before it's too late, tell them you see them. Tell them they matter. Because sometimes, the smallest acknowledgement can change everything. Thank you for listening. And if this story moved something in you, don't just carry it. Share it. Let it start a conversation. Maybe someone else needs to hear it too.